Good evening, members of the public, staff and councillors. I declare the ordinary council meeting of Monday the 17th of March 2005 open now at 7 p.m. I would like to advise all members of the public here this evening that tonight's meeting will be live streamed and will also be audio recorded. If you are asking a public question or making a statement or deputation to the meeting, we request that you take a seat at the table, which is that one just to your front. Members of the public are reminded that no other audio or visual recording of this meeting by any other means is allowed. That brings us to agenda item number 1. Agenda item number 1 is attendance and apologies. We have received one apology from Councillor Morgan Bias. That brings us on to agenda item number 2. Agenda item number 2 is public question time. Agenda item 2.1 is responses to previous public questions taken on notice. And you'll see reflected there on the screen in the agenda and the minutes are questions with answers responded to them. That brings us to agenda item 2.2. Agenda item 2.2 is public questions. I declare public question time commenced now at 7:01 p.m. And I'd like to ask Ms Miriam Boatman from Oakford to please come forward and ask her question.
It's actually Miriam Botman. I really don't need one of these. Okay, so yes, I am Miriam Botman from Oakford. I'd like to thank Mayor Coles and the councillors for the opportunity to bring these issues to your attention. The two questions I posed to council I think are interrelated. Question 1 was who authorised the subdivision of lot 207 Cargottich Road in Oakford? And the second one is where is the Shire's duty of care for its residents over the lack of planning for the closure of Cargottich Road?
Thank you for your question, Ms Boatman. I will ask the Director of Development Services to please provide a response to your first question.
Thank you, Mr President. Thank you for the question. So in terms of who authorised the subdivision of lot 207, so the subdivision of the subject land was authorised and approved by the Western Australian Planning Commission.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you for the answer, Director. Ms Botman, would you like to ask your second question?
Well, I actually have some background information that I would like to add to my two questions.
Unfortunately, tonight we've got numerous questions. So you have submitted your questions. The first one you've just asked and has been answered by the Director. The second question we have there is about the duty of care. Would you like to ask that question and then the Director can provide a response?
Okay, so where is the Shire's duty of care for its residents over the lack of planning for the closure of Cargottich Road?
Thank you for your second question. Again, I would ask the Director to please provide a response. Infrastructure Services this time. Thank you, Director.
The closure was carefully planned in advance with thorough coordination between the Shire and the contractor. The contractor has provided all relevant documents including traffic, emergency, safety and quality management plans. A comprehensive internal communication plan was implemented. 2 written notices were sent to residents on the 24th of December and again 24th of December 2024 and 31st of January 2025, and 1 to Main Roads WA on the 7th of January 2025, informing them of the planned works and the necessary traffic management measures ahead of the commencement of works and implementation of the closure on the 10th of February 2025. To further ensure road users were informed and could plan ahead, variable message boards were installed at various locations on the 28th of January 2025. The works were also advertised through the Shire's website and Facebook page. Emergency access has also been a key consideration with coordination between the contractor and DFIS to ensure their approval of the proposed emergency access arrangements. The officers do appreciate the challenges the roadworks, combined with the developers' works, are causing to residents, and we are working on solutions to this, which we hope will come into effect in the coming weeks with regards to truck traffic to and from the subdivision using an alternate route.
Thank you, Director. Thank you for your two questions, Ms Botman.
I'm not able to reply to that at all?
No, you're not. As I said, we have several members of the public wanting to make a question tonight. If council is minded, they may extend question time. If that is the case, you may come forward then. I'd now like to ask Ms Jenny Gaunt to please come forward and ask her questions. Thank you, Ms Gaunt. Please state your name and please ask your question.
My name is Jenny Gaunt. I'm asking questions in relation to the sand mine proposal in Albury. My first question is, recently the Kwinana City Council ran a workshop for rural landholders, last week actually, about black cockatoos and habitat preservation. I understand that it takes 100 to 150 years for a tree to become a nesting location for these birds. The area that is in question with the Albury Sand Mine proposal, which I believe you are discussing tonight, is a wildlife corridor. So my question is it morally right for private landholders to be the ones responsible for maintaining biodiversity in this area? And how does this mine align with the Serpentine Jarrahdale City's Cockatoo Action Plan?
Thank you for your first question, Ms Gaunt. I will ask the Director of Development Services to please provide a response.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for the question. So in response, officers have and continue to be guided by the DWER expertise in respect of assessing the clearing of native vegetation and impacts on fauna, including impacts on black cockatoos. The Shire has several strategies that deal with protection and enhancement of the environment. These include our urban and rural forest strategy, our State of the Environment report and our local biodiversity strategy. However, this application requires a clearing permit to be issued by the DWER. The DWER approved the original clearing permit in 2016, amended it in 2019, and again are being asked to amend it to allow this sand mine to occur.
Thank you for your answer, Director. Ms Gaunt, would you like to please ask your second question?
The council already turned down this proposal in October 2024. Why would the council go back on their previous decision?
Thank you for your second question. Again, I would ask the Director of Development Services to please provide a response.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for your second question. So following the October 2024 decision, the applicant appealed the council's decision through the State Administrative Tribunal process. Council has been invited by the State Administrative Tribunal to reconsider its decision, and this is in accordance with Section 31 of the State Administrative Tribunal Act 2004.
Thank you, Director. Ms Gaunt, I'll ask you to ask your third question, please.
Has the State Administrative Tribunal heard this again since 2014, and on what basis?
Thank you for your third question. Again, I'd ask the Director of Development Services to please provide a response.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for the third question. So in response to that notice, the 2015 State Administrative Tribunal approval of the application remains in place. The application being considered this evening originated last year, and it's in respect of an application to amend Condition 1 of the 2015 approval, which seeks to extend the time period of that proposal.
Thank you, Director, and thank you, Ms Gaunt, for your three questions.
Thank you.
I'd now like to ask Mr Philip Kenworthy to come forward and ask his three questions. And sorry, Mr Kenworthy, before you do, can I just ask you to please provide your suburb?
My suburb is Casuarina. Has SAT heard this again since 2014, and on what basis?
Thank you for your first question, Mr Kenworthy. Again, I would ask the Director of Development Services to please provide a response.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for your question. No, the State Administrative Tribunal approval of the application remains in place. So this application being considered this evening originated last year, and it's in respect of an application to amend Condition 1 of the 2015 approval issued by the State Administrative Tribunal, and it's specifically seeking to extend the time period of the proposal.
Thank you, Director. Mr Kenworthy, would you like to ask your second question, please?
Thanks. The EPA states that a buffer of 300 to 500 metres is appropriate for the type of extractive industry proposed. The mining proposal remedial action plan confirmed the use of screening, sieving machinery. This states the buffer between this industrial activity and sensitive land use is a minimum of 500 metres. This buffer zone is inadequate considering the dust particles can travel for kilometres. Is the council happy to break these EPA recommendations?
Thank you for your second question, Mr Kenworthy. Again, I'd ask the Director of Development Services to please provide a response.
Thank you, Mr President, and thank you for your second question. I guess so importantly, the planning framework does not impose buffers on surrounding properties. So this issue was the basis of the State Administrative Tribunal 2015 approval, which remains unchanged in this proposal to extend the time period of that approval.
Thank you, Director. Mr Kenworthy, would you like to ask your third question, please?
Thank you. Considering some residents received a letter about this only last Monday, giving them just 2 days to prepare a deputation, and your local planning policy 1.4, public consultation, states that you are required to give a minimum of 14 days notice for the lodgement of any submission and consult with the immediate surrounding landowners. Have you really followed the spirit of this policy?
Thank you for your third question, Mr Kenworthy. Again, I'd ask the Director of Development Services to please provide a response.
Thank you, Mr President, and thank you for your third question. So the requirement for 14 days notice applies to applications being advertised for a public submission, which does not apply in this case. In this case, officers notified previous submitters to make them aware of the upcoming meeting following the normal process upon release of the agenda, which occurred Friday a week ago.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Director. Thank you, Mr Kenworthy, for your three questions.
I don't feel like 2 days is enough for working people to prepare.
You have made your point, Mr Kenworthy. I'd now like to ask Ms Vanessa Reynolds to please come forward and ask her questions.
Hello, Vanessa Reynolds from Oakford. My questions tonight are in regards to the waste transfer station that was brought to light at last month's OCM. First question is, can you please advise how many of the bookable hard waste collections, the 3 cubic metre household hard wastes, have been collected since the 1st of the 12th, 2023? Do you want me to do them all? Yep. How many of those collections were additional collections paid for by the resident at 160 metres per booking? And currently, how many SJ residences are eligible to use this service in the Shire?
Thank you for your first question, Ms Reynolds. I would ask the Chief Executive Officer to please provide a response.
Thank you, Mr President. Good evening, Ms Reynolds. Thank you for the questions. In response to your first question, the bookable hard waste collections commenced in June 2024 following appointment of the contractor. To date, I'm advised there's been 4,424 bookings, of which 155 were cancelled prior to the collection being completed. In response to your point A of how many collections were an additional paid for by the resident, 4, I'm advised. And in regards to point B, how many residents are eligible to use the service, 13,038 in November 2024.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Ms Reynolds, would you like to ask your second question, please?
Thank you. In regards, obviously, to the voted selection, what is the best estimated cost of the additional service agreed to in the January OCM in regards to Councillor Mack's alternate motion, where residents are provided with 1 free pass to deliver green waste and 1 free pass to deliver hard waste at their convenience to Watkins Road Transfer Station, using skip bins to contain and dispose of the waste? In that, I'm requesting, please, that it includes wages, disposal, transport costs, hire of bins, facilities on site for the staff, meaning everything needed to make this additional 2 pass available for the residents. Secondly, how is this expected to be provided? Example, attached to the rates notice, and how will it be managed for rental properties and tenants? If a residence is charged for an ancillary dwelling in their rates, will they receive additional passes?
Thank you for your second question, Ms Reynolds. I would ask the Director of Infrastructure Services please provide a response.
Thank you for the question. In regards to question A, the alternative adopted by Council is a reduced version of concept option 1. It will likely result in some savings from not having to redevelop the reuse shop forecourt area. Once the detailed design has been completed, the Shire will have a better estimate of the costs. The operating costs for the redeveloped transfer station will be included in the relevant future annual budget for Council's consideration. In response to question B, officers have proposals about how access to the station will be managed and monitored. The exact model and operation of this will be determined prior to the opening of the facility.
Thank you for your two questions, Ms Reynolds.
May I ask a question?
No,
Heather?
as I said, there's numerous members of the public tonight asking questions. If Council is minded to increase the time of question time, then you'll be availed that opportunity. I would ask Mr Ian Morrow to please come forward and ask his question. And as you're walking up, Mr Morrow, please state your suburb of residence.
Willard. Good evening, councillors. Got 3 questions regarding the sand mine proposal in Albury. Question 1. The council officers deem the noise and dust element to be a closed book issue that has already been addressed. The officers state nothing that has materially changed within the locality. I challenge this as there has been a detrimental change to our climate. Our air is extremely hot, dry and dusty, and the type of residents have changed. This has not been considered by the officers. Secondly, since the original approval, there has been substantial changes to the exposure standards of crystalline silica substances, which came into effect on September 1, 2024. Us residents will be in the direct firing line of this dust. This impacts the communities and should be considered a priority. Who will be held liable for the health impacts from chronic exposure to crystalline silica substances every day?
Thank you. First question, Mr Morrow. I would ask the Director of Development Services to please provide a response.
Thank you, Mr President, and thank you for your question. So the State Administrative Tribunal carefully considered the issue of dust in its previous approval. Dust remains a very important issue. However, SAT have considered this and found that the imposition of suitable conditions to control dust manage the risk of dust lift-off. Provided dust is managed according to the relevant conditions, it will remain consistent with the previous decision of the State Administrative Tribunal. In terms of the silica sand question, this proposal seeks approval for sand extraction to be used in the building and construction industry. This takes the form of the common regular yellow sands used extensively in housing estates and road construction. The applicant is not proposing to extract silica sands to then be ground and refined, which creates the silica dust. DWER have issued a works approval for a prescribed premise on the land, which also includes stringent dust management, monitoring and reporting requirements.
Thank you, Director. Can I please ask you, Mr Morrow, to ask your second question?
I'm curious to the advantage for the Shire and its residents and adjoining cities' residents for the approval of this mine. The officers have stated that these are the following items that will benefit and align with the council plan. Number 1, plan for the sustainable growth of the Shire of Serpentine and Jarrahdale. Number 2, advocate and attract businesses to grow and thrive, increasing opportunities for local employment. And number 3, strengthen and grow the local tourism industry. Can I please get an explanation on how each of these benefits the Shire and its residents?
Before you provide an answer, Director, I understand this may well be an emotive issue to members of the public, but as a presiding member, I will not tolerate people talking. I will not tolerate people calling out. If anyone has a need to talk or to call out, I'll ask them to leave. If it continues, I'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you, Director. Please provide a response.
Thank you, Mr President, and thank you for your second question. So breaking these down individually. So the first point, plan for the sustainable growth of the Shire of Serpentine Jarrahdale. The Shire is one of the fastest growing local governments in WA. In order to achieve urbanisation, large quantities of yellow sand is needed to be imported to lift ground levels and thus enable new residential communities to grow. The growth of the Shire is made more sustainable in sourcing sand material close to the major development fronts that it would service, such as Byford and Mundajong, and of course the new Tonkin Highway. This reduces the carbon emissions from transportation, which features as an important aspect of sustainable development, bracket being to reduce carbon emissions, close bracket. The second point, advocate and attract businesses to grow and thrive, increasing opportunities for local employment. So local businesses within our Shire employ a workforce, which creates the opportunity for members of the Shire's labour force to access these jobs. Businesses also form supply chains that benefit other business growth in the Shire. Employment capacity of our Shire remains one of the most challenging issues associated with high residential growth. The third point, strengthen and grow the local tourism industry. So any development within the Shire requires sand importation, whether that's new residential communities, new roads, new public infrastructure, etc. By connecting the Shire to the Perth metropolitan region through the Tonkin Highway extension, the Trails town of Jarrahdale will become one of the most accessible world-class trails destinations in WA. This will strengthen and grow tourism. As mentioned previously, the Tonkin Highway project requires extensive sand fill in order to be constructed.
Thank you, Director. Mr Morrow, would you like to ask your third question, please?
This mine will greatly affect my neighbours and I in a financial manner. The values of our homes and properties will drop this application being granted. Therefore, when the Valuer General reduces the value of our properties, subsequently the council will be hit with this loss also. Who will compensate for the loss of value with our properties?
Thank you for your third question, Mr Morrow. Again, I'd ask the Director of Development Services to please provide a response.
Thank you, Mr President, and thank you for your third question. So the application was granted approval in 2015, and the matter being considered tonight concerns a request to extend the time period of that approval. Planning decisions made under the Planning and Development Act 2005 do not extend to any local government paying compensation or charging landowners benefit associated with development. Proponents of proposals can consider this at their discretion.
Thank you for your three questions, Mr Morrow.
Thank you, Councillor.
I'd now like to ask Mr Bill Denham of Byford to please come forward and ask his questions.
Councillors, officers, thanks for your time. Last week, Andrew Hastie, the federal member for Canning, representing the Federal Liberal Party, generously committed $2.4 million for the improvement of the Serpentine Jarrahdale netball facilities. The question one is, in the scope of works and costings for the $2.4 million, item priority 2, netball kiosk upgrade, $100,000, could I have a breakdown, please, of how this figure was arrived at?
Thank you for the question, Mr Denham. I would ask the Director of Community Engagement to please provide a response.
Thank you, Mr Denham, for your question. The $100,000 was estimated on market rates and includes new stainless steel benches and appliances, repainting and tiling.
Thank you, Mr Denham. Would you like to ask your second question, please?
Sure. While at the Mundajong Courts making the above generous commitment, I took Andrew Hastie to show him how run down the current facilities are and how much the $2.4 million means to the community. The President of the Shire was also in attendance. After completing the tour, I pointed out that the netball kiosk upgrade figure of $100,000 appeared to be low, and that $420,000 to formalise car parking, i.e. bitumise it, was a costed item, and could the car parking money be used to do the canteen properly? His answer was the $2.4 million was for the netball, and that was fine to reallocate commitment money, whatever was maximum benefit to the netballers and value for the community in the committee's opinion. Mr President, could you please confirm that this is accurate?
Thank you for your second question, Mr Denham. With any successful election commitment, the Shire enters into a funding agreement with the relevant government department who is responsible for administrating the funding. If the federal coalition is successful at the upcoming federal election, the Shire will be required to enter into a funding agreement for this election commitment, where the scope, funding and timeline for delivery is agreed upon by both parties. And what I would say on the record, Mr Denham, is thank you very much for the advocacy that you're doing, especially in line with the Serpentine Jarrahdale Netball Association. I happened to see Mr Hastie on Saturday night, and again, he made a comment to me at how impressed he was with the advocacy that the community is doing, so I thank you for that. Would you like to ask your third question, please?
Yes. So you're not going to, yeah, right, I can't say anything. Could I have a progress report on the new Oakford Volunteer Fire Station, please?
Thank you for your third question, Mr Denholm. I'd ask the Acting Director of Infrastructure Services to please provide a response.
Thank you for your question. Council awarded tender RFT 10/2024 Oakford Bushfire Brigade Station, design and construct to Cloudbreak WA Proprietary Limited at the December 2024 Ordinary Council meeting. As per that council resolution, officers are currently progressing contract and funding negotiations.
Right, thank you.
Thank you, Director. Thank you, Mr Denholm. I'd now like to ask Miss Alicia Denholm from Beaufort to also come forward and ask her questions, please.
Good evening, councillors and shire officers. Thank you for your time. I'm Alicia Denham, the President of Serpentine Jardo Netball Association. My first question is, why was the fence removed on the east and south sides of the Munijong netball courts, as it was not in the scope of works under the budget line item for repainting the courts and drainage? The fence was old, but it served its purpose well.
Thank you for your question, Ms Denholm. I'd ask the Chief Executive Officer to please provide a response.
Thank you, Mr President. Good evening, Ms Denham. Thank you for the question. The fencing on the south and east sides of the netball courts was removed and will be replaced to enhance the facility, as the existing fence was in poor condition, particularly after we removed the electrical cable. The new fence meshing will improve the court's appearance, while also providing a safety benefit, preventing balls from entering the car park.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Ms Denham, would you like to ask your second question, please?
Yeah, so we were told by Acting CEO on Monday night, after he kindly made some phone calls, that an electrical wire was shorting inside the steel pipe conduit. We, the committee, are extremely concerned safety-wise, as we reported the lights regularly tripping off last year and were told the short was on top of the light poles. This steel pipe conduit has only been there for a couple of years. How is the power going to be reinstalled to the lights?
Thank you for your second question, Ms Denholm. Again, I'd ask the Chief Executive Officer to please provide a response.
Thank you, Mr President. Certainly safety is a priority for us, I have to say. The power will be reinstated by relocating the wiring underground, providing a more reliable, safer and durable solution. And of course, all works will be carried out by a licensed electrician in accordance with our requirements.
Thank you, Mr CEO. And Ms Denham, would you like to ask your third question, please?
Yep, so back to the fence. Is the fence going to be replaced in its original position, or is there a hidden agenda to suit the Peel Football League? After last year, the committee feels that netball is always disadvantaged after internal decisions are made within the Shire.
Thank you for your third question, Ms Denholm. Again, I would ask the Chief Executive Officer to please provide a response.
The fence will be replaced in the same location it was.
And again, I will extend the same courtesies to you, Ms Denholm, as I did to Mr Denholm. Thank you very much for your advocacy. It's been noted, and the federal politicians certainly acknowledge the work you do, so thank you very much.
Thanks.
I'd now like to ask Leanne Main to come forward and ask her questions.
Good evening, Leanne Main from Weller. Two of the questions that I put forward have reasonably been answered this evening, so I won't ask them again. The other question is, there's conflicting information on operating times for the sand mine. Can you confirm the hours of operation if it goes ahead?
Thank you, Mrs Main, for your third question. Director of Development Services, can you please provide a response?
Certainly, thank you, Mr President, and thank you for your question. In response, so as part of the 2015 State Administrative Tribunal approval, a condition was imposed as follows, and that's condition E. Operating hours are restricted to 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday to Saturday, and that remains the same as part of this proposal.
Okay.
Thank you, Mrs Main. Are you happy with those other two questions? You haven't asked them, but are you happy they've been... Thank you, Mrs Main. That being the case, I'd now like to ask Mr Main to come forward and ask his questions.
Everyone. One of my questions has been answered as well. So, my first question is, the Banksia Woodlands is a nationally protected ecological community grown on deep mineral sands. How do you expect to rehabilitate the site when you extracted the sand?
Thank you for your question, Mr Main. I'd ask the Director of Development Services please provide a response.
Thank you, Mr President. Thank you for your question. So officers having continued to be guided by the DWER expertise in respect of assessing the clearing of native vegetation and how rehabilitation takes place, which does form a requirement of the current clearing permit for the application.
Thank you, Director. Mr Main, would you like to ask your third question, please?
This one, there has been an the council considered the oversight that the driveway entry to site on lot 6 seems to not have a provision as the works approval states.
Thank you for your third question, Mr Main. Again, I'd ask the Director of Development Services to please provide a response.
Thank you, Mr President. Thank you for your question. So conditions are included on the development approval issued by the SAT, including Condition 11, which is to do with the location of crossovers, Condition 13, the sealing of crossovers, Condition 15, the upgrading of existing crossovers, and it will be standard process that prior to commencement of operations, officers would check all conditions to ensure they have been complied with. Just noting that the matter is before council as part of this agenda this evening.
Thank you, Director, and thank you, Mr Main, for your questions.
Oh, thank you.
I'd now like to ask Kylie Francis to come forward and ask her 3 questions. And again, Ms Francis, I would ask if you please provide your residential suburb.
Yep, I'm Kylie Francis and I'm from Wellard.
Thank you, Ms Francis. Please ask your question.
I'm making the table shake. I'm so nervous. To be able to apply for the extension of time, I read that it was stated that the development approval must be substantially commenced. What has taken place to the site of date, or what's the reasoning for no works commenced but the application for extension of time since approval in March 2015? If you look under the LLP 1.3b, whether the development would be likely to receive approval now, referring to the Banksia now being listed as the threatened ecological community under the Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act 1999. This Banksia was listed as TEC since September 2016, so that's after they made the initial application in 2015.
Thank you, Ms Francis, for your first question. Again, I would ask the Director of Development Services to please provide a response.
Thank you, Mr President, and thank you for your question. So in terms of assessing this application to extend the time validity period, the report presented to Council in October 2024 detailed the relevant considerations, and I will quote from that report. So these considerations were A, whether the planning framework has changed substantially since the development approval was granted, B, whether the development would likely receive approval now, which you touched on, and C, whether the holder of the development approval has actively and relatively conscientiously pursued the implementation of the development approval. In respect of these criteria A to C, so A, the permissibility for extractive industries has not changed from an A land use within the rural zone from TPS 2 to the new LPS 3. So it remains a use which may therefore be approved in the rural zone under the new scheme as it was under the old scheme. The application would likely be able to receive approval given the assessment detailed within the report provides sufficient justification that the proposal still meets all the relevant state and local planning frameworks. And C, whilst no physical development has occurred on site, the applicant has sought to pursue and commence development since the initial proposal. The applicant has provided amended reporting, documentation and other studies. Revised extraction plans and other documents have been formulated to support the request for the extension of time. So in terms of the comment regarding the Banksia woodland, officers having continued to be guided by the DWER expertise in respect of assessing clearing of native vegetation, how rehabilitation take place, and that forms a requirement of the current clearing permit. So the DWER approved the original clearing permit in 2016, amended it in 2019, and again are being asked to amend it to allow this sand mine. DWER have confirmed that they will be carefully assessing the amendment application and have regard for all relevant environmental matters. And this is particularly discussed in detail on page 90 of the agenda that's before council this evening.
Thank you, Director. Ms Francis, would you like to ask your second question, please?
Yeah, so I've read the literature that's been available so far, but I can't find a provision of works or progress of works. Is there an idea of how this project will run day to day, week to week, and the actual impact it will have on the sites, roads and the community? Where would the community find the provision of the works or progress of works for this application?
Thank you for your second question, Ms Francis. Again, I'd ask the Director of Development Services to please provide a response.
Thank you, Mr President, and thank you for your second question. So the original 2015 approval, which this application seeks to amend, includes condition 2, which requires all development to comply with the Environmental Management Plan and extractive industry licence once approved. So the Environmental Management Plan is attachment 8 on tonight's agenda for this item and can be downloaded via the Shire website. So the Environmental Management Plan details the management framework for the following issues as required by the Shire. 1, traffic management, 2, dust management, 3, noise management, 4, rehabilitation, 5, visual amenity and 6, urban water management. So this is the primary document that manages all aspects of the operation. Separate to this, the DWR has also issued a works approval for a Category 12 screening prescribed premise. This was issued on 1 June 2022. This includes a detailed set of conditions that require control of dust and noise, compliance reporting and ongoing monitoring. These combined with the conditions of development approval would be the management framework for the operations of the proposal.
Thank you, Director. Ms Francis, would you like to ask your third question, please?
Yeah, so the approved routes for the operation include rural roads, which are not built to withstand the traffic which will be generated by these sites when operating. I just estimated that there'd be about 25 loads of sand taken away a day, assuming the operation is 6 days a week, 52 weeks of the year for 5 years, equaling the proposal of 2 million tonnes of Bassendean sand. That's not including the waste. Half of the approved roads in the application are outside of the Serpentine Jarrahdale Shire, when I looked at the boundary. So who will have these roads amended for such usage and for repairs? In particular, Banksia Road, Leiden Road, and the intersection at Leiden Road and Coyle Road.
Thank you for your third question, Ms Francis. Again, I'd ask the Director of Development Services to please provide a response.
Thank you, Mr President. Thank you for your third question. So in terms of haulage routes, Condition R reflects the 2015 SAT approval, which limits haulage to specific routes only. And Condition R states haulage vehicles going to and from the subject site and delivery sites are to use Boomerang Road, Banksia Road, Leiden Road and Coyle Road only. It then details the approved routes of Boomerang Road between the worksite and Banksia Road between Boomerang Road and Lytton Road between Banksia Road and Coyle Road between Lytton Road and King Road, and then finally King Road between Coyle Road and Thomas Road. No deviation from this approved route is permitted without the prior approval of the Shire. There is also linked to this condition the following conditions from the 2015 approval, being Condition O, specifying road upgrades, and Condition Q, rectifying a condition which requires the rectification of damage caused to those roads. A new condition, which is Condition AN, is being recommended to provide for an annual contribution to local road pavement asset deterioration associated with the approval. Where roads exist outside of the Shire, the applicant would be negotiating this matter directly with that affected local government.
Thank you, Director, and thank you, Ms Francis, for your three questions.
Thank you for your time.
I'd now like to ask Alana Fawkes to please come forward and ask her three questions. And again, Ms Fawkes, I'll just ask you to state your residential suburb, please.
Wellard. I'm here to ask questions about the Sound Mine. In regards to your previous minutes, the decision was that the council Resolved to refuse the application. The matter will be heard by SAT at a full hearing, which was, according to the document, would require the engagement of a legal rep as well as a specialist witness to represent the Shire, costing the Shire in vicinity of $50,000. Would it help if the community materially supported this?
Thank you for your first question, Ms Fawkes. I would ask the Director of Development Services please provide a response.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for your first question. So the Shire does not have a practice of seeking community members to help fund legal matters.
Thank you, Director. Ms Fawkes, would you like to ask your second question, please?
Your agenda for tonight states that a new SAT hearing would cost in vicinity of $50,000. Where does this figure come from?
Thank you for your second question, Mrs Fawkes. Again, I would ask the Director of Development Services please provide a response.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for your second question. So this is an approximate cost based on the Shire's legal advocate costs and costs of engaging expert witnesses in order to be able to defend a matter if such was subject to a full hearing of the State Administrative Tribunal.
Thank you, Director. Mrs Fawkes, would you like to ask your third question, please?
Residents who are not on mains water rely on rainwater and groundwater for all aspects of living. Who is responsible for water testing to ensure their safety when silica dust covers their roof and water table drops?
Thank you for your third question, Mrs Fawkes. Again, I would ask the Director of Development Services to please provide a response.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for your third question. As per the conditions of the 2015 approval and the works approval recently issued by the DWAR for the prescribed premises, dust is required to be comprehensively managed with ongoing monitoring and reporting. Landowners would have the opportunity to raise any concerns with the DWAR at any time.
Thank you for your three questions, Mrs Fawkes. I'd now like to ask Ms Jill Sheridan to please come forward and ask her three questions. And again, Ms Sheridan, I'd please ask for you to state your residential suburb.
Oh, I will. So, Jill Sheridan. I live in Wellard and have for 40 plus years and have been fighting this for 20 years. So I do not want it to go ahead. Anyway, my first question is, can I ask why they have changed the stages, as stage 1 is now taking out the large Banksia woodland and have changed times to Monday to Saturday 7 a.m. till 5?
Thank you for your first question, Ms Sheridan. I would ask the Director of Development Services please provide a response.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for your first question. So the 2015 SAT approval actually included Condition 4, which provided operational hours of 7 a.m. to 5 p.m, Monday to Saturday. And as I've mentioned briefly previously, the extent of excavation proposed in this application remains unchanged from the 2015 approval.
Thank you, Director. Ms Sheridan, would you like to ask your second question, please?
Right. As per WorkSafe, if you are working on a site with Basildine sand, silica, you must wear protective clothing. But where is the protection for the adults and children living close by with no protection, especially with the easterly winds blowing on a regular basis, sometimes all day? Who will take the responsibility to protect people in the area, especially families living within the buffer zone? Will Hanson be responsible for our doctor and hospital bills if we get sick through mining silica sand?
Thank you for your second question, Ms Sheridan. Again, I would ask the Director of Development Services please provide a response.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for your second question. So, as per the 2015 approval and the works approval recently issued by the DWR, dust is required to be effectively managed at all times. Specifically, the DWR works approval for the Category 12 screening prescribed premises states conditions for dust management, dust monitoring and compliance reporting. Dust should not escape beyond the limits permitted under the works approval, and their abilities to report this via the DWER's 24/7 Pollution Watch hotline.
Thank you, Director. Ms Sheridan, would you like to ask your third question, please?
Will Hanson guarantee, with mining these properties, that my rural lifestyle will change and not be interrupted by the sound of trucks and machinery, possibly running from 7 till 5? We live in a rural community, not industrial. We love our bush and look after it for the environment.
Thank you for your third question, Ms Sheridan. Again, I would ask the Director of Development Services to please provide a response.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for your third question. The noise is required to be managed in accordance with the 2015 SAT approval and the works approval. In specific regard to noise, the environmental noise assessment shows that the assigned levels are met during the daytime period at the closest point to the nearest noise-sensitive receiver. The compliance was demonstrated assuming construction of a temporary noise bund at the top of the quarry for Stage 2 works. The report also recommended that additional best practices should be implemented to minimise noise impacts where practicable, and these include stockpiles being located to provide acoustic screening to the residents wherever practicable. If reversing alarms are deemed necessary, all plants should be fitted with the broadband type reversing alarms, and the road required for the loading of trucks being designed such that trucks are not required to reverse, and this ensures truck reversing alarms are minimised. SAT, in approving the application, determined that noise levels can be managed within the acceptable levels of the noise regulations.
Thank you, Director. Thank you, Ms Sheridan, for your 3 questions.
And I hope you vote no to the clearing one. Thank you.
Thank you. I would now like to ask Mr Ian Rich to come forward and ask his 3 questions. I've just been told by the CEO we have written approval. I'd now like to ask Mrs Michelle Rich to come forward and ask questions on behalf of Mr Ian Rich.
Good evening, councillors and officers. Could I please ask for clarification before I ask the questions on behalf of Ian? On the Shire's website, it has stated that there is an item labelled as 9.3 notice of motion. There is no 9.1, so should this notice of motion be labelled 9.2?
No, Mrs Rich, there is a motion 9.1, 9.2 and 9.3. So you are correct, it should be 9.3 and it's in the agenda. Would you like to ask your question, please?
Thank you. In which financial year would the Shire expect the upgrade of each road listed in Notice of Motion 9.3 OCM 17th of March 2025 to commence?
Thank you for the question, Mrs Rich. I'd like to ask the Acting Director of Infrastructure Services to please provide a response.
Thank you for your question. There is currently no schedule to upgrade these roads. Whilst officers are finalising a 10-year road program which takes into account the condition assessment, traffic volumes, funding opportunities, the road hierarchy, strategic and societal fit, it only includes roads for upgrades within the Shire for roads older than 10 years and currently with an asset rating of very poor. This plan is unlikely to schedule each road listed in the notice of motion, but it is likely to include some sections of these roads.
Thank you, Director. Mrs Rich, I'd like to ask your second question, please.
Thank you. What is the expected current cost of upgrading all the roads listed in the Notice of Motion 9.3 OCM 17th of March 2025?
Thank you for your second question, Mrs Rich. Again, I would ask the Acting Director of Infrastructure Services to please provide a response.
The costings on the roads are currently in draft and will be presented to a future council meeting as part of the 10-year Forward Works road program. However, this will most likely be only for sections of roads listed in the notice of motion, and some roads may not be included at all.
Thank you, Director. And Mrs Rich, would like to ask your third question, please.
Thank you. What is the projected cost of upgrading all the roads listed in Notice of Motion 9.3 OCM 17th of March 2025 if upgrades commencement in the timeframe expected by the Shire?
Thank you for your third question, Mrs Rich. Again, I would ask the Acting Director to please provide a response.
We refer to the answers to questions 1 and 2.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Thank you, Mrs Rich. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of public question time at 7:49 p.m. Under the Act, I need to allow 15 minutes. We've well and truly exceeded the 15 minutes. However, I believe there may be other people who'd like to ask questions. I'm cognizant of the hour, but is there a councillor who would like to extend question time for another 10 minutes? Thank you, councillor Duggan. Is there a councillor who's happy to second that? Thank you, councillor Jarrett. Is there anyone opposed? 10 minutes, yeah. Motion is carried unanimously. So question time will now be extended until 7:59 p.m. Are there any members of the public who'd like to come forward and ask a question? Yes, gentleman in the front row, and then Mrs Bond, you can be after this gentleman. Just as you come forward, sir, please state your name and your residential suburb. Thank you.
Todd Casuarina. So I'm led to believe that after this court case about the sand mine, if you say no again and it goes to court again, you have to pay the legal costs. Is that true?
Thank you for your question. I would ask the Director of Development Services please provide a response.
Thank you for your question. Well, the State Administrative Tribunal is a no-cost jurisdiction, so it is quite unusual that the tribunal would impose a costs order against a party. It has happened in the past, but it's only where a party's been generally found to be acting in bad faith. So I would not expect that question to be something that would be routinely done at the tribunal.
Okay, so you're not being blackmailed.
Thank you for your question. I think I didn't get your surname, but Todd, I think it was. Mrs Bond, would you like to come forward and ask your question, please?
Item 10.1.2. Does council still have any reports of the contamination of this site, and has council inspected the site after the previous occupiers of the site moved not too far from 766 King Road after this site was shut down? Is the Shire going to apply the same loose conditions as previously, and what contamination report does council have, if any, of both sites?
Thank you for your question, Mrs Bond. Director of Development Services, are you able to provide a response? Would you like to take that on notice?
I certainly can do my best to provide a response, Mr President. Thank you for the question. So the site in question was owned by a different entity, which in 2018 undertook a significant range of unlawful development. The Shire successfully prosecuted that entity and had a court-imposed fine of just shy of $500,000, given the significant unlawful development that had occurred. Now, the site is a suspected contaminated site, and further investigation is required. So that's
the word suspected. It is a contamination site.
Sorry, Mrs Bond, can you please allow the Director to please answer your question?
So the terminology used by the DWER Contaminated Sites branch is it's a known or suspected contaminated site, further investigation required. So as part of that process to undertake remediation, there is certainly a process that the Contaminated Sites branch of the DWER need to be part of that process. The conditions that are recommended on tonight's agenda are recommended by officers and are for council's consideration, and certainly the conditions go, I think, some way to recognising that there is a significant risk associated with the previous activities that did occur on the site, and that risk is required to be managed. And conditions are there to manage that risk as part of the remediation and rehabilitation of the proposal, which forms part of item 10.1.2 this evening.
Did you cover the other site there?
Thank you, Director. Do you have another question, Mrs Bond?
I'm not satisfied with that answer. I'll have to have that detailed in writing because somebody missed something there, didn't they? I didn't.
Okay, well, it will be provided, as all your questions you ask will be provided
Thank you.
answer provided in response. Do you have another question, Mrs Bond?
Item 10.1.3. This matter was refused by Council OCM 21st of October 2024, and SAT has now instructed this to be reconsidered. What is the cost to the ratepayer if this matter was challenged by the Shire? How likely is it the Shire would win this challenge, or is it a foregone conclusion the applicant knows they have already secured approval which will result in the destruction of sensitive bush and spread toxic silica dust to people living in the vicinity?
Thank you for your second question, Mrs Bond. Again, I'd ask the Director of Development Services to provide a response if you're happy to, Director.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for your second question. So the point of if the SAT don't instruct a local government to reconsider, they invite a local government to reconsider their decision. So that's just a small point of terminology that needs to be pointed out. So council, before it has the opportunity to reaffirm its decision from October or modify its decision from October or reinstate a different decision from one that was made in October. Ultimately, whatever decision is made tonight, it still is up to the applicant to choose whether they continue their tribunal proceedings or vacate their tribunal proceedings. I did mention that the tribunal is a no-cost jurisdiction, so if council doesn't change its decision from October, it's probably likely that the matter would proceed to a full hearing of the tribunal, and in those cases it would be up for the Shire to meet its costs in defending that decision, as it would be up to the applicant to meet their own costs in essentially trying to press the final decision.
So the Shire's got no intention of doing anything about this at all?
Sorry, is that your third question, Mrs Bond?
No, it isn't. I've got another one.
Okay, I'll ask your third question, please.
Well, what happened to the end of that one?
I think the Director's answered the question, Mrs Bond. If you've got a third question, please ask it.
Okay, not satisfactory, the answer. So that'll have to be detailed better than that. What are the rules regarding those community groups which are provided with the yellow bags by the Shire to collect roadside rubbish for which we pay them? Is it appropriate to have the bags on roads throughout the Shire until the bag turns yellow and starts to fall apart and lots of other rubbish is thrown on and around them?
Thank you for your third question, Mrs Bond. I'm looking at the Acting Director of Infrastructure Services. Would you like to take that on notice, Director? We'll take that third question on notice, Mrs Bond.
Okay.
Thank you for your questions. According to I've got 2 minutes and 45 seconds left of public question time. I think both of you have already asked a question. Is there anyone here that hasn't asked a question? I think Mrs Rich, you've already asked a question. Oh, no. Hey, we've already asked a question, sir, so I'm trying to be... Sorry, sit down. You can sit down, thank you, sir. Miss Francis, would you like to come forward? How many other people are there that would like to ask a question? Mrs Rich and... Well, do you want to sit down, Miss Francis? Gentleman here in the high vis, would you like to come forward? You haven't asked a question yet. And you've got 2 minutes, sir.
You've got no pre-questions because I've been fighting a fire since 1400 hours today and I've come straight off a fire ground.
Thank you. Thank you for your service. Can you please state your name and your residential address, please?
Brian Manning, Mundijong. I sent a thing to Ali Teasdale re the Mundijong Precinct F6 structure plan, and I've got a lot of questions on that, but obviously we've run out of time now, and I was working on it at home when a pager went off, and that changes my life completely, so I can't proceed any bloody further.
You still got...
The matter is not over.
Mr Manning, you've still got a couple of minutes. I'm happy for you to ask your question.
Where's septic coming from? Where is water supply coming from? We live in a rural environment. I know progress is coming, but I don't want it rammed down our bloody throat.
Thank you for your question, Thank you for your question, Mr Manning. Director of Development Service, you're able to provide a response, please.
Certainly, thank you for the question. So you're correct in saying that for land in Mundijong to be converted for residential development, it needs both deep sewer and water reticulation to be extended. So the sewer system will be extended via a pressure main from Byford to a new sewer pump station being constructed near the intersection of Scott Road and the new Tonkin Highway. Yes. It will then be up to developers to haul that sewer to their development projects, such as the Area F6 structure plan area. So that will be a requirement for developers to meet that cost. Water is located within the Patterson Street sort of main water supply system. You might recall that was upgraded in about 2020, 2021. They essentially dug it up, relayed new pipe work. That was in anticipation of urban development taking place. So for a place like Area F6 to be able to develop, they would need to haul a suitable water main from that trunk up to their development precinct.
Bearing in mind, there's still 1 kilometre section along Wright Road, because I watched the whole system go in when I was 10 years old. I know it intimately. There's still a 200mm section where the rest has been upgraded to 300mm, because when I applied to go on the scheme in 1971, they said, oh no, the pipe's already full, you'll have to wait. Well, it wasn't bad, about 45 years, so it's not a bad wait.
Thank you, Mr Manning. I think you've got a second question there. I'll let the director answer it. That has been 10 minutes up, so I'm happy to show some leeway and let the director answer your second question.
Well,
Are you happy to answer the question, Director?
I was still formulating more questions when I got called out, so it'll have to put it in abeyance. But to change tactics for a second, I've been on Leopold Road today. Now, a lot of signs have gone up around the Shire. This is digressing. 50k signs. Leopold Road was used for a transfer for Munajong while they were upgrading it. I went down there with an empty water truck today and nearly got thrown out of the seat, and I wasn't exceeding the speed limit and my seatbelt was on. The road is still signposted in both directions, 80 kilometres an hour. It would be lucky to be suitable for 40 kilometres an hour. There is no shoulders on the road, particularly when you turn off Cargottage Road onto Leopold Road. There is 180mm of right angle drop. Someone pulls off with a car like she did tonight when I was coming out, and there's no way in the hell she can get back on the road without ripping the wall of the tyres out. It's one of the worst roads in the Shire, and I know this Shire pretty intimately.
Thank you. I don't know if that was a question or a statement. I don't know, Mr.
So how can that still have an 80k speed limit when it's had heavy traffic for months and months and months while they're working on Munajong Road? The shoulders haven't been touched, nothing's been touched, and it's still signposted at 80k.
Thank you, Mr Manning. We'll take that question on notice. Councillors, I still believe that there is at least 2 members of the public that would like to ask a question. It is nearly, well, it's now gone past 8 o'clock, but I am, I suppose, would allow a motion to come from councillors if someone would like to extend question time for another 10 minutes. Is there a councillor who's happy to do that? Bearing in mind, we've got quite a significant agenda tonight to get through. Is anyone who'd like to move that motion? Yeah, thank you, Councillor Bishop. Is there someone who's happy to second that motion? Motion is lapsed for the want of a seconder. Can you please leave the council chamber, Mrs Rich? I'm now going to take a 10-minute adjournment to regain control of the meeting. The meeting is now adjourned at 8:02 p.m. for 10 minutes. Thank you, members of the public, councillors and staff. The ordinary council meeting, the 17th of March, is reconvened now at 8:12 p.m. That brings us to agenda item number 3. Agenda item number 3 is public statement time. Public statement time will now commence at 8:12 p.m. I'd like to ask Ms Danielle Bennett to come forward and make her statement.
I would like to formally express my opposition to the mining application and highlight concerns regarding its impact, particularly in terms of noise and dust. It has been noted that there have been no substantial changes locally, but I would like to emphasise that from October 2023 to April 2024, Perth experienced its driest 6-month period on record. This severe drought in it undeniably exacerbated the risk of dust pollution, which in fact has a significant impact on both the environment and health of surrounding residents. Given these conditions, I strongly believe that this factor should not be overlooked and warrants a refusal to the application. In addition, I am still awaiting a response to my previous application for refusal, which sought clarification on accountability measures in the event that noise and dust pollution directly affect my property and family, especially as we are within 500 metres of the proposed buffer zone. In light of these concerns, I respectfully urge the Council to opt for option 2 and refuse the application for an extension for 2 main reasons. One being the preservation of the already threatened Banks Hill woodland and the endangered black cockatoo species that depend on this habitat, and 2 being the significant negative impact that this mining operation will have on the well-being and livelihood of the surrounding community. Overlooking such issues such as dust, noise, traffic and environmental degradation would not only pose a grave risk to the local wildlife, but would also represent a historic mistake for the community. I implore the Council to prioritise the long-term health of both the environment and the local residents by rejecting this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Bennett. I'd now like to ask Ms Sandra Hawkins to please come forward and make her statement. Oh, sorry, Ms Hawkins, yours is a deputation. I've even got new glasses and everything. That being the case, there's only been the one statement. I am happy to open up the floor to people to come forward to make a statement. I would remind people that there is only 3 minutes per statement, and I would also remind every single person in the gallery not to take this opportunity to have a snide comment, remark at councillors or the staff. That being the case, Mrs Rich, would you like to come forward and make a statement?
Thank you, councillors and officers. A large volume of people in the South Ward of this Shire feel like second-class citizens. The motion tonight for 9.3 has not taken into consideration or spoke to anybody affected by the roads, as there is no mention in the motion of the people that actually don't agree with the 50 km/h speed limit across a lot of our southern roads, but do agree that a lot of the roads needed a reduction, but not to 50 km/h. And they still have many, many questions. As, will there be a recommendation in the draft budget to be presented to Council for an increase in the funding for tree verge pruning, given the large volume of trees that inhibit the free movement of right-of-way vehicles on many of our southern roads? Has the Shire sought legal advice with regards to the liability if Council were to support the item as it stands, given the fact that Council requested the speed audit work to be undertaken and I would assume now hold a speed audit report that would include safety information and recommendations. Over the last few months, there's been a number of community forums held in the South Ward where many concerns have been raised across a number of road safety maintenance issues. We have bridges that have had their loads reduced, which inhibits our businesses in the Southern Ward. As we heard earlier from Mr Brian Manning,
2 minutes, Mrs Rich.
we have many roads where it is unsafe to move off the thin ribbon of bitumen onto the shoulders to safely pass oncoming vehicles. Is there going to be increased budget from the Shire in the coming financial year to improve the road shoulders across the Southern Ward? When does an intersection become eligible for upgrading? Is 14 documented accidents in a 10-year span not enough? Do we need fatalities for action to be taken in this space? This Shire sprouts about working with and supporting local businesses.
Thank you, Mrs Rich. That's 3 minutes.
Why don't the businesses in the south of the Shire matter? Why are residents in the south of the Shire treated?
Mrs Rich, I'm going to ask you now to remove yourself from the table. 3 minutes has been extended. Is there any other questions or statements that people like to make? Mrs Rich, sorry, Mrs Bond, would you like to come forward and make your statement, please? And again, I'll make the same comments, that it's 3 minutes. Thank you, Mrs Bond.
Okay. With regards to item 10.1.2, this property was a seriously contaminated site and the cost of remediation was suggested to be around $2 to $3 million. The operators at the time moved to another site not far from this site after being removed by the Shire. The owner at the time could not afford to remediate the site. How often is this council going to put the cart before the horse? Has anyone checked the new address to see whether this other site is now contaminated? You should be able to guess why I had asked that. With regards to item 10.1.3, sand extraction sounds simple enough, not when it will destroy sensitive bush and provide a health risk to people living near it. Silicosis has no cure and the silica dust is as lethal as asbestos. And we all know the rules which apply to asbestos. Why not the toxic lethal dust? What use are councils if governments override council decisions brought about by the community? Don't allow our Shire to be further turned into a scarred toxic dump, and don't allow government and their know-nothing bureaucrats to shift the blame to councils. The unsightly Monday signs are an eyesore. Why the need for so many? When a councillor has a vested interest, which is very obvious to many in the Shire, re our environment, they should be upfront and remove themselves from voting on any environment issues. It is a huge conflict.
Thank you, Mrs Rich. Sorry, Mrs Bond. The gentleman in the second row on my right-hand side just looked at me there in the black shirt. Would you like to come forward, sir, and make your statement again? No more than 3 minutes, please.
Just regarding the sand mine, I've been watching us constantly as a community be bullied by state government. You know, we have our ideas and what we want as a community, but yet again, we're being bullied by the state government and their bureaucratic and their departments where they pass the buck to and from each department. No one wants to take the blame or any responsibility. You know, the reports that this whole sand mine's been based off was written nearly 20 years ago. It hasn't been amended. It's never been fact-checked. The state government gets an expert, subject matter expert, to write a report, and basically we run off that with no fact-checking or no accountability back to that again. So I just urge councillors just to vote this down and let's fight state government and we know what's right. We want to keep the bush, and if we knock it down, it's gone forever. There's no price on that. You can't put a value on it. So that's just my statement then. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Can you please state your name for the record and your suburb of residence, please?
Oh, what's Wellard.
Sorry, I missed that.
Wellard.
What was your name?
Oh, Ian, sorry. Ian Morrow.
Thank you, Ian Morrow. Was there another person want to come forward and make... the gentleman behind you, Mr Denham, then you, Mr Denham.
Thank you, councillors. My name is Philip Kenworthy of Casuarina. A basic geological study of the area shows that there is no yellow sand for building and construction in the area. Why have the mining company stated that they're going to use this sand for construction when we don't use that sand for construction? It seems like if you're going to fill your application with lies, it's certainly not a good starting point. There is a document, I've forgotten what it's called, I think someone knows, that shows that the sand is actually silica sand for export, and it's 99% silica. I just wanted to bring that to your attention before you vote yes for an application that, as the previous gentleman said, has not been fact-checked and is obviously incorrect. I mean, just high school level geology would tell you that.
Thank you for your statement. Mr Denham, would you like to come forward and make your statement, please?
Firstly, something positive. I'd like to acknowledge the great job the reception or the front desk staff do. They are the first point of call for ratepayers, so they're extremely important. I found out that unfortunately we are losing a customer service team leader. That's the position, because I'm unable to name a council policy, but she has done a great job for a few years now. Good luck in the future and thanks. Secondly, as stated in question time, the $100,000 from that committed hasty fund is for new stainless steel benches and appliances. That proves to me that the officers doing the advocating don't really know what we need and what we're advocating for, because the canteen needs completely rewiring. There is no range hood or exhaust fan for all the 6 deep fryers, and the floor surface needs to be anti-slip, not lino. The oven door doesn't even close. And sometimes we do up to 80 kilos of chips on a Saturday, so I think we're more in the vicinity of 300,000 and it might be closer. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Mr Denham. I think there was another person, the young lady there putting her hand up with the sunglasses on her head. Please come forward. Please state your name and your suburb residence. Thank you.
Danelle Kennedy, Darling Downs. This is in regard to the sand mine as well. So that's lot 6 Bankshire Road and lots 300 and 301 Boomerang Road in Albury. It's quite ironic that the proposed area involves clearing Bankshire woodlands and is bounded by Bankshire Road. Significant, don't you think? The clearing of 11.2 hectares of Bankshire Menziade and Bankshire Attenuada woodland, which is a nationally protected ecological community under the EBPC Act 1999, located on the Swan Coastal Plain and in predominantly very good ecological condition, will worsen the loss of foraging habitat essential for the survival of the endangered Carnaby's black cockatoo population in southwest and Western Australia. The application is deemed to have an unacceptable impact on the remaining Bankshire woodlands in the Shire of Cemeton-Jarrahdale. These woodlands are part of a nationally protected ecological community and provide vital foraging habitat for the endangered Carnaby's black cockatoo and the forest red-tailed black cockatoo. Unlike most of the Perth-Peel region, the Shire of Cemeton-Jarrahdale is also home, and breeding area for the rarest of the black cockatoos and critically endangered, the Bowden's cockatoo, or the Bordens. Given the planning framework, any negative effects on these three species are considered unacceptable, as this would further reduce the capacity of the natural environment to sustain the species within the Swan Coastal Plain region. I quote from Murdoch University, who did a project on the Keep Carnaby's flying, which I'll detail that the Shire was involved in. Decisions made by local governments play a vital role in whether black cockatoo flocks thrive in a particular area or are lost entirely from some suburbs. In 2022, the Shire was one of 4 local governments that participated in the Keep Carnaby's Flying project, and a conservation action plan was developed, which included Murdoch University's Black Cockatoo research team.
That's 2 minutes, ma'am.
That partnered with a range of stakeholders, including experts in their field. On the Shire's own website, date stamped 25th of June 2024, it states, Shire President Rob Coles affirmed the Shire's commitment to caring for and protecting native wildlife. We are extremely lucky in the Shire as we host populations of all 3 black cockatoo species, President Coles added. We will continue to do all we can to ensure these remarkable birds are enabled to thrive in our beautiful Shire. The Shire's Black Cockatoo Action Plan acknowledges that the number 1 main cause to these birds' decline is where their foraging, roosting and breeding habitat has been stripped away, with further fragmentation and degradation. WA's black cockatoos face a storm of cumulative impacts driving their declines, the clearing of food sources such as Marri-Joa and Banksia without sufficient replacement, causing ongoing net loss of food and the felling of roost trees and breeding trees which can take centuries to replace. Replacing Banksia and rehabilitation has been attempted before and is not actually that successful. They are a hard species to grow. They're actually really fickle. Tried doing it. I've tried many times and I kill them. Trees are slow and they're very slow growing trees. They will not be useful for black cockatoos for many years, and by then it may very well be too late. I'll refer to the Shire's Banksia Woodland Management Plan, and in 3.1 it states land clearing, development and intensification of land use results in habitat loss, fragmentation and change.
Sorry, ma'am, that's 3 minutes.
Damn it. Okay. All right.
You made some very good points. Thank you. That being the case, I'd now declare public statement time closed at 8:29 p.m. and move to agenda item number 4. Agenda item number 4 is petitions and deputations. 4.1 is petitions, which there are nil. 4.2 is deputations, and I would like to ask Ms Sandra Hawkins to come forward now and make her deputation. Thank you, Mrs Hawkins.
Sandra Hawkins, Whitby. Deputation is on behalf of the Serpentine Jarrahdale Lounge Club, of which I am the secretary. On Sunday, the 5th of October 2025, it will be the annual Jarrahdale Log Chop and SJ Lions Country Fair, organised and run by the SJ Lions Club members. I'm not sure of the date when the first SJ Lions Fair was run, but the Log Chop itself has been in Jarrahdale for a lot longer than the Lions, 30 years or so. Each year, costs increase, as they do everywhere. However, last year saw a dramatic rise, and this has necessitated my being here presenting this deputation. The event has always been a popular event on the calendar and will continue to do so as long as sufficient funds are available from our sponsors. The members have discussed the future of the event, including the positioning of it, whether we move it to a larger area, as expansion is not possible on the Jarrahdale Oval, but for the foreseeable future it will remain where it is. Once again, the event will be a free entry for all. It has been suggested quite a few times that a donation box at the entry would not be out of order. Whether this will be done depends on the members' vote. Our continued aim is to provide as much free component as possible, especially as the economy is still not on a good footing. Our applications for funding are at this point in time being prepared for our usual sponsors. The Shire being a little different. Last year we obtained a grant of $60,000 spread over 3 years, $20,000 per year. In short, we cannot survive on the 20. Our traffic management alone was over $18,000. and I do know that the Shire are very well aware of this, having used traffic management in their own events. I ask you all now to consider amending our contract to $30,000 for the next 2 years, which is an increase of $10,000 per year. The Serpentine Jarrahdale Shire is the primary sponsor, and the Log Chop and Fair are one of the largest events on the Shire's calendar. Let us make it truly memorable. The sponsors' funding not only assists the Lions Club to put on the event, but others, when we ask other volunteers groups to help us on the day. They are the Serpentine Volunteer Fire Brigade, the Munijong Volunteer Fire Brigade, the Food and Farm Alliance, the SJ Market Team, the Armidale Police Rangers, the JCC and the Byford Boy Scouts. If we did not have these volunteers, the costs would be very much higher. Never have so many volunteer groups come together to provide a day of enjoyment for hundreds of families, not only from the Shire, but from Albany to Geraldton. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs Hawkins, and thank you for everything that the Lions Club does in our Shire. I'd now like to ask Mr Jason Hunt from State West Planning regarding item 10.1.2 to come forward and make his deputation. And thank you for your patience tonight, Mr Hunt.
Mr President, councillors and staff, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak on item 10.1.2 tonight. My name is Jason Hunt. I'm from State West Planning, and where the proponent with me tonight is Mr Johnny Morton, who's representing the landowner. There is going to be a separate deputation after this to deal specifically with items that have been raised by members tonight in regards to DWER and the remediation and rehabilitation plan, so I'll allow them to provide answers if any of the councillors have questions on that. Okay, I'm here to support the officer's recommendation, but to request a modification to conditions 5 and the removal of condition 8 on the proposed conditions. The land, as detailed in the officer's report, has an existing approval. We lodged an application seeking to amend this approved footprint in May 2024 and to also resolve a legacy issue at the site from the previous owner, a matter that has been raised earlier tonight by a community member. This application will resolve old issues and make the site be a use for the community. The current owner settled on the purchase of the site in early May 2023, which, as detailed in the officer's report, has been historically the subject of compliance matters due to waste material stockpiled on the site by the previous owner. The management of this part of the application and this aspect is being dealt with by the environmental consultants who are providing a deputation also tonight, so they'll be able to answer any questions. We've been working with the Shire officers on this application for a significant period of time, and we want to thank them for their input in this process. It has been a bit of a journey to get to this point, but the report, I think as you'll all acknowledge, is very comprehensive. The site, as councillors will be aware, has been significantly developed through the previous application, and which is what contains the existing approval. And there is an existing approval footprint to which this application still will remain within. What is critical is that this development will be done in 2 stages, and stage 1 involves the cleaning up of the site. The portion of the site to be used for tree grinding and associated mulching activities, as per the current approval, is being reduced from the current 6.2 hectares to an area that is 8,000 square metres. The location of this activity has, following the community consultation process, been relocated to a portion of the site furthest from King Road and also, as far as possible, within the development footprint from the recently approved development to the south of this site. There is one condition which we're seeking to have amended. This is condition number 5, and another we're seeking to have removed. This is condition number 8. And we do this following the State Administrative Tribunal process just to set out a methodology for considering conditions. There's been an adopted approach by the SAT and other appeal bodies when considering the validity and appropriateness of specific conditions. For a condition to be valid, it must satisfy what, through the SAT process, has evolved to become a 5-part test. Initially, it needs to be imposed for a planning purpose. Secondly, it needs to be fair and reasonable and relate to the development. So it needs to have a nexus, a connection, some direct link to what the development is about. It needs to be reasonable. It needs to be certain so that it's understandable and enforceable by people not involved in the original application. And finally, it needs to not leave the approval to obtain further approvals which may change the important aspects of that approval. There are multiple documents available detailing this matter, and we think there is a lack of validity of 2 conditions which we are now seeking the Council's assistance to resolve. Condition 5, as per the officer's recommendation of option 1, is not, in our view, able to satisfy the reasonability test, as it effectively nullifies the benefit of the approval. Condition 5 currently reads that mechanical servicing, repairs, painting, washdown and degreasing of commercial vehicles in part or whole is not permitted on the subject land at any time. We request that the proposed condition be removed and that we provided 2 proposed alternate conditions to deal with the same matter, which we believe is what is trying to be dealt with in the officer's report. Currently, the proposed condition does not allow for repairs to maintain commercial vehicles in a roadworthy condition. Items such as changing a tyre, repairing a broken light, replacing a mirror, or replacing a mudguard under the proposed condition could not occur. This doesn't align with achieving the West Australian heavy vehicles accreditation requirements. We've engaged with Shire staff through this process and understand that the reason and the concern that have led to this condition are noise. The noise report that was prepared in support of this application considered this type of work, and that is noted in the officer's report, and its assessment confirmed that compliance could occur. We also note that proposed condition 11 requires a noise management plan to be prepared for the site. So again, this can be dealt with under conditions which are being proposed. We therefore propose the condition be broken into 2 parts. A, only routine maintenance of a quiet and minor nature, such as servicing or wheel changing for commercial vehicles, is permitted on the property. No panel beating, spray painting or removal of major body parts is permitted. Currently, the existing plans which form part of this approval show 2 washdown bays, and this detail doesn't align with the other part of condition 5. The recommended condition wording, in our view, doesn't achieve the intent of the condition. This ensures that the condition of the approval doesn't align with the plans, and therefore there is not certainty, understandability and enforceability for people not involved in the approval at this time. We therefore also propose that either as one condition or 2 separate conditions, a condition be put on in replacement that says the washing of commercial vehicles at the property shall be limited to wash bay locations with only the use of water and mild detergent, and shall not involve and use any solvents, substances, equipments or processes which may cause pollution or unreasonable noise or odour. We also note that condition 13 on the recommendation involves a spill management plan, so that documentation and the requirements of the washdown bays can be dealt with through that condition. We then move on to condition 8. In our view, this doesn't satisfy the test of suitability for this condition, and we request it be removed. The condition currently requires, as listed, an audit to be undertaken in regards to road contributions through the road deterioration impact audit in alliance with WALGA guidelines. Our concerns in this condition can be summarised as follows. We engaged with the Shire staff when the agenda was released, and it was confirmed that there's no specific local planning policy that links to this condition. The condition therefore has no planning purpose. The planning regulations under clause 67(2) do require a local authority to consider matters, and one of these include vehicle movements and the capacity of the road network to accommodate the proposed use. The traffic impact statement that was undertaken in support of this application determined that there would be no impact on the road network. The site has an existing approval which has a similar footprint. This existing approval included the use of heavy vehicles entering and exiting the site for the mulching and soil blending activities that occurred there. As previously stated, the traffic impact statement shows that King Road is part of the restrictive access vehicle RAV network and is classified as a primary distributor road, and it has a daily vehicle capacity of 15,000 vehicles. The current anticipation with this application being included is under 3,000 vehicles, including all vehicle movements on the road, not this particular site, but all vehicles, so well under the capacity of the road. This road is also used by multiple other landowners in the locality, and as I've stated, it's part of the RAV network, so regularly has trucks on it and has been built for this intent. The traffic impact statement advised that no network upgrades or roadworks are required due to the proposed vehicle movements at the site. There are development works occurring to undertake upgrade works at the crossover associated with the existing driveway which currently abuts King Road. This crossover will be maintained by the landowner to ensure vehicles suitably access and egress the site. The last point we've got is that the guidelines reference, the WALGA guidelines in this condition, relate to increased loads above normal loads. There's been discussion tonight about extractive industries and the movements of specific loads on set routes. The review of the documentation shows that this is this is a timeline, this is an increased volume that is above and beyond what is normally expected on the roads. This is not a new development, it has an existing approval, and as per the condition that makes the the site management plan part of it, it's been done and accommodated to allow local drivers to have facilities there. Local drivers that will not be leaving and going in a standard direction, local drivers that will only have a couple of commercial vehicles, and therefore the ability to try and impose this on a multitude of those just becomes unworkable and therefore an unviable condition. Once again, we do want to thank the officers for what is, as I've said, a very comprehensive report, and we are asking the councillors to support the officers' recommendation, but we are asking that the two changes that we've requested form part of an alternate motion in support of the current one. Like I said, I have myself and the landowner here if there are any questions, but there is a deputation to follow from the environmental consultants if they relate to that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Was there another deputation, sir?
There is another deputation coming here,
Yep.
so I just wasn't sure if there are any questions now or...
No, I don't believe so. I would ask the gentleman, is it Tim Treffy, if I said that correctly? Tim Treffy to come forward and, or was it Noel Davies? Noel Davies, sorry.
Yeah.
Noel Davies, please come forward.
To start on the contamination.
Thank you, Mr Davies. I assume one of you is Mr Davies?
I'm Mr Davies, thank you.
Thanks. I look forward to hearing your deputation.
Okay. My expertise is environmental management and particular contaminated sites. I've been helping Johnny Morton. I formerly worked with Aurora Environmental, recently retired. A number of concerns have been raised about the stockpile of material on the site that was extensively contaminated. As has been stated, it's about 20,000 cubic metres that were deposited on the site by another landowner. And Johnny Morton's trying to get this approved, approval to allow that to be reused on site. In order to do that, there's been extensive sampling in accordance with contaminated sites guidelines of all imported waste material on the site. And what that shows is that all of that material is essentially suitable for reuse on the site. There's a very small, probably 100 cubic metres that had slightly elevated metals, still suitable for reuse on the site, but out of an abundance of caution, we're going to actually remove that and take it away off site. So the materials, it's unbelievably low contamination. There's no real evidence of any asbestos on the site. And essentially the idea is to process material and then deposit it on site under a cover of about 300 millimetres of asphalt and road subbase, so it'll be completely covered. There's been a groundwater investigation on the site which shows no evidence of contamination emanating from the stockpile. So it's been there for 4 or 5 years and there's no evidence that it's contributing to groundwater contamination. All of that material has been provided to the Department of Environment and to Council. And the intention is, once the site has been remediated, we'd seek for it to be converted from contaminated investigation required to remediated restricted use. The restriction is just to say that it should be remain for commercial or rural land use and not residential. It probably could be used for residential, but we're not seeking that use and it's not consistent with the proposal. So, yeah, so in short, the material's very benign, and there will be an ongoing management program through the processing with people on site supervising to ensure that if there's any unexpected finds, drums or those sorts of things, they'll be removed from site and any additional asbestos. So it should be a quite straightforward process in terms of the remediation. Paul, next to me, is going to talk about the approvals required.
No, thank you, Mr Davies, and over to you, Mr Bryans.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr President and councillors. My name is Paul Burns. I'm a Principal Environmental Scientist with Coterra Environment, a consultant. I'm working with Noel Davies here and for Johnny Morton to support him. My role in this part of the activity is to secure the Department of Water and Environmental Regulation works approval for the crushing and screening activity that's proposed to occur at King Road. Our works approval was lodged with the Department of Water and Environmental Regulation on the 24th of January this year, and it's currently being deliberated with the department. In short, we identified noise and dust and asbestos risk management, even though we haven't found asbestos on site, as key matters. There are other matters, of course. We proposed that noise would be suppressed by a temporary noise wall, a 3-container high noise wall. Dust would be managed by ensuring that feedstock into the crushing and screening plant was effectively wet or dripping. And asbestos risk would be managed by a range of activities. We haven't found asbestos, but we understand there's an asbestos risk. We see the asbestos risk. And what we'll do in that space is complete a management plan for it, but it will have daily inspections, training of staff, stop work provisions, and management measures for anything that might be unexpected, because there could be stuff that you sample an area, and if we have unexpected finds, we'll have measures in place for containment of those materials, treatment, and then disposal means through approved disposal pathways. At this present point in time, the Department of Water and Environmental Regulation has asked for more details on the noise assessment. They've asked for more details on the composition of the material. They have asked for groundwater monitoring results and an asbestos management plan. We're currently working towards providing those to DWER, and it is being deliberated at the moment. So that is with the department, and that's my role to secure that approval for the project.
Can I just make one addition? It needs to be pointed out, this works approval application is for a very short-term project. It's it's been variously estimated to take 4 weeks to 3 months to process the material, depending on the methodology and the contractor. At most, it would be 6 months, so it's not a permanent installation. It's purely there to allow the material to be processed to a geotechnical form that it can be placed in the ground and make viable, useful, geotechnically suitable ground.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for your deputation.
Thank you.
I'd now like to ask Mr Tim Treffy, on behalf of Hanson, to come forward and make his deputation.
Thanks, Tim Treffry from Hatch. Thanks, Mr President and councillors and staff for your time. We support the officer recommendation, and you ask why. Dust and noise are matters that have previously been dealt with by the SAT decision. But more importantly, the site is only one of a few regionally significant sand resources in the whole of the South Metropolitan region. It's picked up in the State Planning Policy 2.4 Basic Raw Materials and Council's own Local Planning Scheme 3 as a Special Control Area 4, which is specifically set up to identify and protect the operation of extractive industries. It's one of a few sites that's been nominated for a number of years for sand extraction. This is why the WAPC and SAT granted planning approvals and extractive industry licences previously for the site. If sand isn't extracted from this site, we're going to have to go find it from somewhere else. It's not really appropriate. These are the sites nominated in the state level policies in your own planning scheme. It's not really appropriate to go and look for an alternative site next to residents that aren't nominated in these policies. The appropriate planning decision is to extract sand from the nominated sites. That leaves the remaining matter to be addressed, which is correct, is the clearing permit. Banksia Woodland is a state level planning consideration, and it needs to be dealt with by the state level planning authority, which is DWER. Other consideration is that site rehabilitation is to be carried out. It's to be carried out by Hanson. They're the leaders in Banksia Woodland rehabilitation. They're probably the only group that can probably get it done successfully. They've done the research, the work on sites at their Gaskell Avenue site is inspected by both Kings Park and DWER in terms of how they have been successful. In my experience, the consideration of the clearing permit is best undertaken by DWER as the appropriate authority to determine it. Final matter is the extraction of silica sand has been raised. The proposal for this operation is to simply for the sand to be excavated, placed in trucks and to be transported to housing estates within Serpentine Jarrahdale. There is a big demand for fill and it needs to come from the nominated site. No processing of the sand is undertaken. There's no milling, there's no grinding, there's no basis for which how silicosis occurs. They're simply loading the sand onto the trucks for distribution to the nominated residential sites that need fill sand within the Shire. Thanks for your time.
Thank you for your deputation. That brings us to agenda item number 5 in tonight's ordinary council meeting. Agenda item number 5 is President's Report. So good evening and welcome to the March Ordinary Council meeting. It's truly an exciting time for our Shire as we continue to make great strides in delivering key projects that will shape the future of our community. I want to start by thanking all of our residents for their patience and understanding, especially with the ongoing roadworks and street closures, and I know it has been very frustrating. I know that these can be inconvenient, but I want to reassure you that they're a clear sign of progress. We are actively working to improve our infrastructure and deliver the best outcomes of our community. As many of you would know, local road upgrades have been a key priority for our Shire. We've worked hard to ensure that these important projects are front and centre, and I'm pleased to say that efforts are starting to pay off. Thanks to the support of the state government and local residents, we're seeing much needed upgrades to our local roads. And with the Tonkin Highway extension set to begin later this year, these roadworks are crucial to improving the overall connectivity and safety of our region. One of the most exciting infrastructure developments is the Kiernan Park Recreation Precinct. Earlier this month, we announced the award of the tender for the first stage of this much anticipated project to CivCon Civil and Project Management. This is a significant milestone for our Shire, and I'm thrilled that we are one step closer to providing our community with the top quality sports and recreation facilities we've all been waiting for. Over the next few months, we will see this project come to life, and I can't wait to watch it unfold. These projects are a reflection of our commitment to improving the livability and progress of our Shire. I understand that roadworks and closures can be challenging, but they are also an essential part of building the infrastructure that will serve our community for generations to come. Your continued patience and support are invaluable, and I want to sincerely thank you all for your understanding as we work towards delivering these important upgrades. In addition to these local projects, the Shire has also worked hard ahead of the state election to ensure our community's priorities were heard by all major parties. The result has been significant commitments from all three major parties, including support for road upgrades and the Recreation Centre in Byford. This is a clear sign that our voices are being heard and we are on track to deliver more for our Shire. Looking ahead, we're also preparing to advocate for the issues that matter most to our community in the upcoming federal election. We will continue to ensure that the progress, livability and the future development of our Shire remain a priority for all federal candidates in this seat and the region. Earlier this month, we welcomed the Honourable Andrew Hastie MP to the Shire, who announced that a federal Liberal government would invest $2.4 million to upgrade the Munajong netball courts. This commitment is significant and we gladly welcome it, and we thank the Honourable Andrew Hastie for the commitment. While we're talking about politics and politicians, I'd also like to take a moment to congratulate the Premier of Western Australia, Roger Cook, MLA, and our local member, Hugh Jones, MLA, for Darling Range on their re-election to the WA Parliament. Since becoming the Shire President in October 2023, I've witnessed Hugh's dedication to our community and his strong understanding of the priorities that matter most to our residents and our ratepayers. I look forward to continuing our partnership and collaboration to achieve the very best outcome for our Shire. I also want to acknowledge the hard work and commitment of the WA Liberal and Nationals WA candidates, being Paul Mansfield and Morgan Bias respectfully, and all other candidates throughout the election campaign. Their dedication to our community has been evident, and I wish them both the very best for future endeavours. Just on that, I'd like to make an announcement and thank sincerely the efforts of Councillor Morgan Bias. Councillor Bias was first elected onto council for the North West Ward in October 2017, and we have been advised by email last night that Councillor Bias will be resigning with immediate effect from the 31st of March this year. So on behalf of council, on behalf of community, it is not an easy job being a councillor. It is not an easy job to get re-elected, and I'd like to acknowledge on behalf of all councillors the excellent work, dedication and service that Councillor Morgan Bias has done to the residents and ratepayers of Serpentine Jarrahdale since October 2017. On a more sombre matter, I would like to pay tribute to former councillor Barry Urban. My deepest condolences go to his family and his friends during this difficult time. Thank you all for your continued support. We're moving forward, delivering projects that will enhance our community's future, and I couldn't be more excited for what's to come. Together, we're building a brighter future for our Shire and, most importantly, our residents and ratepayers. That brings us on to agenda item number 6. Agenda item number 6 is declaration of elected members and officers' interests, and there are several tonight. Firstly, the Chief Executive Officer, Mr Paul Martin, has declared a financial interest in item 8.2, which is Special CEO Employment Committee meeting of the 24th February 2025. The nature of Mr Martin's interest is that he is a CEO, and the Employment Committee does deal with matters relating to his employment. The extent of Mr Martin's interest is that he is the Chief Executive Officer. Myself, President Rob Coles, has declared impartiality interest in item 10.1.1, display of 16 Mundy Estate signs, retrospective, at various locations with the Munajong, Oakford and Cardup localities. The nature of my interest is I'm a member of the Byford, I think that's a typo. I think the nature of my interest in that one is impartiality because I am friends with one of the landowners. Councillor Shay Mack has declared a partiality interest in item 10.1.1, which again is a display of 16 Mundy Estate signs retrospective at various locations within the Munajong, Oakford and Cardup localities. The nature of Councillor Mack's interest is that he is friends with someone who is displaying signage on their property. The extent of his interest in partiality. President Rob Coles and myself, I've declared impartiality interest in item 10.4.2, Byford and Districts Country Club request for financial support. The nature of the interest is that I am a member of the Byford and Districts Country Club, and the extent of my interest is impartiality. Councillor Shane Mack has declared impartial interest in item 10.4.2, Byford Districts Country Club request for financial support. Again, the nature of Councillor Mack's interest is that he is a social member of the Byford Districts Country Club. The extent of his interest is impartiality. Councillor Courtney Mazzini has declared impartial interest in item 10.4.2, Byford Districts Country Club request for financial support. The nature of Councillor Mazzini's interest is impartiality. The extent is that she is a member of the Byford Districts Country Club and she's also friends with the chair of the Byford Districts Country Club. My final impartiality interest, or conflict of interest I should say, has been handed to me by Councillor Tricia Duggan. She is also declaring an interest in agenda item 10.4.2, Byford Districts Country Club request for financial support. Her interest is impartiality. The nature is that she is a member of the Byford Districts Country Club and the extent is impartiality as she is a member of the Byford and Districts Country Club. That brings us on to agenda item number 7. Agenda item number 7 is confirmation of minutes of previous council meetings. Agenda item 7.1 is ordinary council meeting 10th of February 2025. Is there a councillor happy to move the minutes for that meeting? Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Councillor Mazzini, happy to second. Is anyone opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. That brings on to agenda item 7.2. Agenda item 7.2 is special council meeting 5th of March 2025. Is there a councillor happy to move the minutes from that meeting? Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Is there a councillor who's happy to second? Thank you, Councillor Jarrett. Is anyone opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. That brings on to agenda item number 8. Agenda item number 8 is receipt of minutes or reports and considerations of adoption of recommendations from council meetings held since the previous council meeting. Agenda item 8.1 is audit, risk and governance meeting 24th February 2025. Is there a councillor who's happy to move the minutes of the audit, risk and governance meeting 24th February 2025? Thank you, Councillor Jarrett. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Mack. Is there anyone opposed? Motion is carried unanimously.
Mr President, I declare a financial interest in item 8.2, so I'm going to leave the room and the Director of Corporate Services is going to come and sit here.
Thank you, Mr CEO. That brings us to agenda item 8.2. Agenda item 8.2, a special CEO Employment Committee meeting on the 24th February 2025. Is there a councillor who's happy to move the minutes of that meeting? Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Jarrett. Is anyone opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you, Mr CEO. That motion was passed unanimously. That brings us to agenda item 9.1. Agenda item 9.1, notice of motion, financial support to the Byford Baptist Church. This was a motion that was circulated by me. I'm happy to move the motion. Is there a councillor happy to second that motion? Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Is there anyone opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. That brings us to agenda item 9.2, notice of motion establishing a food security and peri-urban agricultural action group within the Shire of Serpentine, Jarrahdale. This is a motion that I have brought forward, so I'm happy to move it. Is there a councillor who is happy to second this motion? Thank you, Councillor Jarrett. Is there anyone opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. That brings us on to agenda item 9.3. 9.3 is notice of motion, request Main Roads West Australia remove its speed limits. This is a motion that has been circulated by Councillor Duggan. Councillor Duggan, would you like to move this motion?
Thanks, Mr President. Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Is there a councillor who is happy to second? Thank you, Councillor Jarrett. Is there anyone opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. That brings us to agenda item number 10. Agenda item number 10 is Chief Executive Officer reports. En bloc. So as part of the Shire's efforts to ensure the efficiency and effectiveness of meetings, tonight's meeting includes the opportunity for matters to be considered en bloc by council. Matters not to be included en bloc, decisions are those which require absolute majority, matters to be determined behind closed doors, declared interests made in relation to the item, and deputations or statements made in relation to that item. Before commencing the process, I'll explain to you the process which I have just done. So what I'll do now, there are only 3 items that I would like a council to move that will be passed en bloc. Those 3 motions are firstly 10.1.4, Munajong Precinct F6 Local Structure Plan, which actually we've had a member of the public make a question on that, so I think that needs to be taken off the list, because I think there was a gentleman, Mr Manning, that made a question about that, so that'll be taken off. So that will leave us only with 10.3.1, which is confirmation of payment of creditors, and 10.3.2, which is monthly financial report, January 2025. Is there a councillor who is happy to move those 2 motions en bloc? Thank you, Councillor Jarrett. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Is anyone opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. That brings us on to agenda item 10.1, Development Services Reports. 10.1.1, display of 16 Mundy Estate signs, retrospective at various locations within the Munajong, Oakford and Cardup localities. Is there a councillor who is happy to move a motion? Thank you, Councillor Jarrett. Are you happy to move the officer's recommendation?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you, Councillor Jarrett. Is there a councillor happy to second that motion? Thank you, Councillor Mazzini. Is anyone opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. That brings on to agenda item 10.1.2, which is alterations and additions to approved tree grinding facility, resource recovery centre and transport depot at lot 102766 King Road, Albury. I understand, Councillor Duggan, you have an alternate motion that you'd like to move.
I do, thanks President Coles, but if I may just ask some questions of the Director of Services beforehand. Would that be okay, just based on
you can ask
the
your
deputation? It's to do with condition 5. The recommendations that have been put forward, 5A being mechanical servicing, repairs, painting, washdown or degreasing of the commercial vehicles in part or whole is not permitted on the subject land at any time, and then 5B having that change to 5A being only routine maintenance of a quiet and minor nature such as servicing or wheel changing for commercial vehicles is permitted on the property. No panel beating, spray painting or removal of major parts, body parts is permitted, with 5B being washing of the commercial vehicles on the property shall be limited to the wash bay locations with only the use of water and mould detergents and shall not involve the use of any solvents, substances, equipment or processes which may cause pollution or unreasonable odour. Do you feel that this would be an appropriate substitution for condition 5, considering condition 13, which discusses a spill management plan, please?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Duggan. Director, are you able to provide a response, please?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you for the question through you, Mr. President. Looking at the proposed adjustments, I believe they are acceptable. I think they reflect the intent of what Condition 5 was trying to achieve, being to limit the high-risk activities. So my professional view is that the recommended changes to Condition 5 are consistent with the planning framework.
Thank you, Director. Does that assist Councillor Duggan?
That does, thanks. So I'd like to put forward an alternate recommendation with the alteration to condition 2 saying, as was shared earlier, being the hours of operation of the transport depot are restricted from 7am to 7pm Monday to Saturday. The hours of operation of the tree grinding facility are restricted to no more than 4 hours per day during the hours of 7am to 5pm Monday to Saturday. Dust lift-off must be suitably controlled and contained to the property boundaries during times that the tree grinding facility is operating. Where dust control is not viable and causes dust lift-off beyond the property boundaries, such as during high wind conditions, the tree grinding facility is to cease operations until such time that control of dust to within property boundaries is regained. and if condition 5 can be altered to that which was mentioned previously and on page 2 of the deputation presented by Jason Hunt, please.
Can I just, while the Minute Secretary gets the deputation up, Councillor Duggan, can I just ask you proposing to have the two items part of the same condition 5, so they'd read consecutively one after the other? Is that what you're suggesting, or some different format?
So 5A would be only routine maintenance of a quiet and minor nature, that paragraph in italics, and 5B would be washing off the commercial vehicles on the property, that paragraph in italics.
The Minute Secretary's benefit, that's in the deputation, on page 2 of the deputation, made by Mr Hunt.
I'm happy to read it out if that's easier.
Just go further down, you'll see there's italic sentence starting with, no, back up where you were, just starting with only. So I think Councillor Duggan's proposing that sentence become 5A. I'm not sure if the Director of Development Services has any additional suggestions for wording that might help. That would be fine. Yeah. And then the second italic sentence there, start commencing with washing of the commercial vehicles, is point 5B. Is that what you're proposing, Councillor? Can we just adjust the formatting a bit just to... Is that what you're proposing, Councillor Duggan?
Yes, I am. Can I just double check condition 2, please, as well? Sorry, once they've finished this one.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Duggan?
Thank you. I'm happy with that.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. So, Councillors, there is an alternate motion on the table. Is there a councillor who's happy to second the alternate motion? Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Is there anyone opposed? Motion is carried unanimously, and we will need a reason, Councillor Duggan, please, from the officer's recommendation.
Certainly, just for control of, for dust mitigation. Dust mitigation reasons. Yep, that's fine, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Thank you, Minute Secretary. Okay, that brings us to agenda item 10.1.3. Agenda item 10.1.3 is a sections 31 reconsideration proposed extension of development approval and extraction timeframe for industry extractive, lot 6 Banksia Road and lots 300 and 301 Boomerang Road, Albury. Is there a councillor who's happy to move a motion?
Mr President, before that occurs, can I just bring to Council's attention the email that was circulated about condition I in 10.1.3. Condition Roman numeral I talks about references the landowner submit the Shire of Serpentine Jarrahdale by the 30th of November 2024. It should be the 30th of November 2025. we can pick up that in the changes that's being made. I think there we are. Highlighted in yellow there on the screen for
Thank you,
Councillor's
Mr
reference.
CEO. Councillor Duggan, you got your arm up. Would you like to move a motion?
I move option 2, please.
Option 2. Is there a councillor who's happy to move? Thank you, Councillor Jarrett. Is there anyone opposed to this motion?
Wait till we get it on the screen.
So it was moved, Councillor Duggan, and it's option 2.
That's what you're proposing to move, Councillor Duggan? To move it, yes?
That's option 2, Councillor Duggan. That's one you're moving.
Yes, thank you.
And Councillor Jarrett, you're happy to second that motion?
Yes, that's correct.
I'll just wait till the minute secretaries. So we've got a mover and a seconder. Is there any councillors? Are there any councillors opposed to this motion? Motion is carried unanimously. Councillor Duggan will need a reason for the difference to the officer's recommendation.
My first point is that no practical works appear to have commenced on site. Second point, no Aboriginal heritage or cultural significance study done since 2009. Third point, no recent environmental survey done based on the latest standards, with the last one being done in 2008. No recent environmental survey being done based on the latest standards, with the last one done in 2008. Next point, it has been suggested that it's listed as a threatened ecological community, which is yet to be disproved.
Can you repeat it, Councillor Duggan, a bit slower for the minute, Secretary?
It has been suggested that it is a threatened ecological community, which is yet to be disproved. Next point, we are unsure of the risk to federally protected Tumulus Springs, TUMULUS, to the south of the site. Next point, rehabilitation of land where it is suitable for supporting black cockatoos takes many decades, so therefore cannot be considered
an acceptable form of compensation for the mining operation. Next point, DEWA approval has not been considered for the site since 2019. And unknown if it is based on latest standards and known best practice.
I think it's a continuation of the same
Yep.
point. And saying and unknown.
And the final one, the application does not meet community expectation. And the final one is the application does not meet community expectation.
Can we just change the first dot point to say appear? Or do you want to say no practical works appeared to commence on site? Or do you want to say appear?
No, appear, thank you.
You happy with that, Councillor Duggan?
Thank you.
Thank you, Minute Secretary. Thank you, Councillor Duggan. That brings on to agenda item 10.1.4, Munajong Precinct F6 Local Structure Plan. Is there a councillor happy to move this motion or a motion? Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Is that the officer's recommendation?
Happy to move officer's recommendation, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Is there a councillor happy to second that motion? Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Is there anyone opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. That brings on agenda item 10.1.5. Agenda item 10.1.5, there is an alternate motion as circulated by Councillor Bishop. Councillor Bishop, would you like to move that motion? Thank you,
Yes, thanks,
Councillor.
Mr. President.
Thank you, Councillor Bishop. I think it's up on the screen now for your convenience. Is there a councillor happy to second the alternate?
Mr. President, can we ask Councillor Bishop just to read what the new addition is for the
Thank you,
benefit of the
Mr.
Gal?
So the amended motion is essentially the officer's recommendation with the inclusion of point 5, which requests the Chief Executive Officer, if changes are not made to the proposed structure plan, to prohibit a direct roundabout connection between Blair Road and the future industrial estate, to bring a report to Council no more than 3 months after the Western Australian Planning Commission approval, with options to investigate and/or implement traffic calming measures which may be necessary.
Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Is there a councillor happy to second that motion? Thank you, Councillor Jarrett. Is anyone opposed? Motion is carried unanimously, and we will need a reason for the difference, please, Councillor Bishop, which you've already done. Thank you. Are you happy with that?
Yes, Mr. President.
That brings us to agenda item 10.3.1, which is our first of a motion that's been moved on block. Oh, have I missed a few? Got too excited. Okay, 10.2.1, the glasses aren't helping. 10.2.1, Infrastructure Services Reports, Abernathy Road and Hopkinson Road intersection street lighting upgrade. Now, Councillor Matt, you have moved an alternate motion. Would you like to move that now? And I would ask that you confirm that that's the correct wording as per the screen.
And Councillor Mackey, happy to advise the gallery of the changes?
I am, yes, and the alternate motion is to change point 1, say resolves not to proceed with the Western Power street lighting upgrade project application for the intersection of Abernathy Road and Hopkinson Road. Point 2 will still read allocates 19,413 to the intersection of Hopkinson Road and Rowley Road street lighting upgrade project. And we'll have a point 3 to allocate $22,150 to the purchase of a new mobile lighting tower for the use of the intersection of Abernathy Road and Hopkinson Road. The reasons for the change of budget will be the budget is no longer required for the Tonkin Highway extension works, with the funding to be reallocated to Hopkinson and Rowley Road street lighting upgrade, and the purchase of a new mobile lighting tower by the Shire for temporary lighting of the Abernethy Road and Hopkinson Road intersections and future Shire use as required thereafter. And point 5, reading, request the Chief Executive Officer right to Western Power and the Shire President right to the WA Minister for Energy and the local member raising concerns with their prolonged timeframes for delivery of lighting projects, seeking improvements with the view of reducing delivery timeframes, particularly in the case of non-complex projects or projects associated with the improving of lighting of black spot areas.
Areas or locations?
Locations.
Thank you, Councillor Mack. You're happy with what's on the screen? You've obviously been reading it off the screen.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, thank you. Is there a councillor who's happy to second that alternate motion?
Mr. President, if I may, just a question about
Question,
it.
Councillor Jarrett, please ask it.
I'm not opposed necessarily. I just want to confirm if this lighting tower, the price of the lighting tower is for the appropriate lux or lumen suitable to an intersection such as Abernethy and Hopkinson, or if this is more a rough guide for the pricing.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Jarrett. Acting Director of Infrastructure Services, are you able to provide a response?
Yes, thank you for the question. The temporary lighting tower has globes of a considerable wattage above the wattage of a typical street light, so would provide a vast improvement on the lighting of the intersection and will make it very clear that the intersection exists. There's been no design undertaken of the level of lighting or light spread across the intersection from the lighting tower.
Thank you, Director. Did that answer your question, Councillor Jarrett?
Yes, it is. Thank you. I'm happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Jarrett. Is there any councillor who's opposed to the alternate motion?
Not opposed. I've just got a couple of questions too, if I may.
Sure.
Thank you, through the chair. How is it that the lighting tower will be powered, please?
Thank you for your question. Acting Director of Infrastructure Services, are you able to provide a response, please?
Yes, thank you for the question. The lighting tower is powered by solar panels and batteries.
Thank you, Director. Do you have another question, Councillor Duggan?
Yes, if I may. Based on what you were just saying about it being of a higher lux than a normal street light, do we have any concerns for any residents in that area that it may cause a change in their conditions, please?
Thank you for the question, Director. Infrastructure Services, are you able to provide a response, please?
That hasn't been considered. The lighting towers, the lights, the direction of the lights can be adjusted. The lights can be adjusted such that the light spread is within the road pavement only. However, in saying that, there has been no assessment undertaken of the adjoining properties and potential impact to those properties.
Thank you, Director. Do you have another question, Councillor Duggan?
Yes, if I may. Through the chair, do we have any long-term plan for the light tower once it's no longer required at this intersection?
Thank you for the question. Acting Director of Infrastructure Services, can you please provide a response?
At this point in time, that hasn't been considered, no.
Councillor Matt, did you want to provide an answer or some guidance in regards to that last question by the Deputy President?
Sure. As part of the Q&A the other night, it was considered about putting hired temporary lighting in there. To me, the cost of hiring temporary lighting at that intersection would be at a cost of around about $22,000 to $28,000 per year, and we don't know what the delays are going to be in the construction.
Sorry, Councillor Mack, I think the question was, would you have any ideas? I think that was a question that Councillor Duggan asked.
So to answer the question of that, if there are delays to Tonkin Highway, I would expect it to still be used at the intersection of Abernethy and Hopkinson, which could be an unknown quantity of time. After that, I would imagine it could be used at any of our other local community events. For community members, we could potentially hire it out. It could be something for options for council to look at the future. And I would also imagine that we'll have other street intersections that might be considered and needing lighting upgrades as well. So there are plenty of future needs that it could be used for.
Any other questions, Councillor Duggan?
No, that's fine, and thanks very much for your answers, Councillor Mack and Director.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan.
I'm not opposed.
Yeah, thank you. Got a mover and a seconder. Again, I'll call. Are there any councillors opposed to the alternate motion? That being the case, that alternate motion is carried unanimously, and Councillor Mack will need a reason for the difference, please.
to ensure adequate lighting of a black spot location within our shire, being the intersection of Abernethy Road and Hopkinson Road.
Thank you, Councillor Mack. Thank you, Madam Secretary.
You happy with that reason of difference?
That brings us on to agenda item 10.3. Agenda item 10.3 is corporate services reports. 10.3.1, confirmation of payment of creditors. That was moved en bloc. 10.3.2 is monthly financial report for January 2025. That too was moved en bloc. That brings us on to agenda item 10.3.3, which is budget adjustment for unallocated surplus. Is there a councillor happy to move a motion in regards to 10.3.3? Councillor Jarrett, would you like to move the officer's recommendation?
Yeah, happy to move the officer's
And
recommendation.
Councillor Duncan, you happy to second?
Happy to second,
Thank
thanks.
you. Is there anyone opposed to this motion? Motion is carried unanimously. That brings on to agenda item, so I'll just pause. Says Councillor Jarrett, seconded by Councillor Duggan. Oh, sorry, you're on the right page, I was on the wrong one. Okay, so now we're on to 10.3.4, 2024-2025 statutory budget review. Is there a councillor happy to move a motion in regards to this agenda item? Councillor Duggan, you happy to move the officer's recommendation?
Yes, thanks.
Thank you. And Councillor Jarrett, you had your hand up. You happy to second?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you, Councillor Jarrett. Is anyone opposed to this motion? Motion is carried unanimously. That brings us to agenda item 10.3.5. Agenda item 10.3.5 is corporate business plan performance report, October to December 2025. Is there a councillor who's happy to move a motion in regards to this item? Thank you, Councillor Jarrett. Would you like to move the officer's recommendation?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you, Councillor Jarrett. Is there a councillor happy to second? Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Is there anyone opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. That brings us on to agenda item 10.3.6, which is council policy reviews. Is there a councillor happy to move a motion in regards to this agenda item? Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Is that the officer's recommendation?
Yes, thanks.
Thank you. And Councillor Jarrett, you happy to second?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Any councillors opposed to the motion? Motion is carried unanimously. That brings us on to agenda item 10.3.7, which is superannuation for elected members. Is there a councillor happy to move a motion? Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Is that the officer's recommendation?
Mr President, there is no officer recommendation. It's up to councillors to choose
thank you,
option
Mr.
1,
CEO.
2 or 3.
So, Councillor Bishop, which motion or option should I say would you like to move?
Thank you, Mr President. I'll move option 1.
Option 1, so that should now be on the screen, but will be in a moment. Councillor Mazzetti, you had your hand up. Are you happy to second that, or would you not want to second that? No? Okay, is there a councillor happy to second that motion? Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Is there anyone opposed? Thank you, Councillor Mazzini. Councillor Bishop, would you like to open debate, please?
Thank you, Mr President. Look, essentially, this is a long time coming for local government elected members to be paid superannuation. Look, I believe, in fairness, that nothing will fundamentally change in the next 7 or so months before this guarantee comes into effect. So I'm quite comfortable moving option 1.
Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Councillor Duggan, do you want to speak or reserve?
I'll speak very briefly. I support what Councillor Bishop said. I do note point 3, and this is one of the main reasons why I support this notice of motion, is that an elected member can opt out of superannuation contribution if they so choose. So it does open up that opportunity for elected members to be either in or out. It is something that is required to be brought in for local governments, for all local governments under local government regulations. So therefore, it is something that we are controlled by others for, but option 3 means that we have, and each individual councillor can make their own choice. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Councillor Mazzini, do you like to speak against?
Thank you. I agree with absolutely everything that everyone has said. I simply just don't believe a budget variation needs to happen. I think we personally can wait till July, and therefore I foreshadow if this lapses that I'll be moving option 2. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Mazzini, it might be my ears that need work now after my eyes. I didn't hear you. Can you please say that again?
I agree with absolutely everything that Councillor Duggan and Councillor Bishop said. I just personally don't think we need a budget variation. So therefore, if this motion lapses, then I'll be foreshadowing that I'll be moving motion 2.
Option 2.
Option 2,
Thank you,
sorry.
thank you, Councillor Mazzini. Is there any councillor like to speak for the motion? That being the case, Councillor Bishop, would you like to close the debate, please?
I think I've said everything already, Mr. President. Happy to put it to the vote.
Thank you. All those in favour of the motion? All those against? Oh, sorry, it's unanimous. Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. That brings us to agenda item 10.4.1, commemorative naming proposal for Reserve 19-19-7 and 24-162, being the Keysbrook, sorry, the Hopeland Reserve in Hopeland. Is there a councillor happy to move the officer's recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Jarrett. Are you happy to second Councillor Duggan? And I assume that's the officer's recommendation, Councillor Jarrett?
Yes, that's correct.
Are you happy to second Councillor Duggan?
Yes, thanks.
Are you sure? Thank you. Anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried unanimously. That brings us on to agenda item 10.4.2, which is Byford Districts Country Club request for financial support. Is there a councillor who is happy to move this motion? Thank you, Councillor Jarrett. Is there a councillor happy... Sorry, that's the officer's recommendation?
Yes, that's correct.
And is there a councillor happy to second the motion? Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Is anyone opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. That brings us on to agenda item 10.6. Agenda item 10.6 is confidential reports. I will need a councillor to move a motion to close the meeting to members of the public to discuss this behind closed doors. Thank you, Councillor Jarrett. Councillor Mackie, happy to second. Is there anyone opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. I thank the members of the public for their patience tonight. You're more than welcome to come back in afterwards, or you can go home.
Well, thank you for your good work.
Thank you for the members of the public who have reattended. To let you know, agenda item 10.6.1, the confidential matter, Council has resolved unanimously to authorise the Chief Executive Officer to negotiate and execute a termination agreement for request for tender 06-2022, which is Traffic Management Services contract with QTM, and notes a new tender process will be undertaken for traffic management services. That brings us to agenda item 11. Agenda item 11 is urgent business. Which there is nil. Agenda item 12 is elected member questions, of which notice has been given, which there is nil. That being the case, I declare the March OCM closed at 9:45 p.m. and thank the members of the public, staff and councillors, and please travel home safely. Good night.